been absolutely terrifying. Someone coming out of a sea that nothing had come out of that direction before, had it? I mean, it was just... No one knew what... none of the monks at the time then knew what was in that. It was just endless ocean in their mind. And to see ships with you lot coming on them must have been absolutely terrifying. Yeah.
I wonder if Clive, maybe you know this because you're the resident fabulous nerd, Vikings nerd. Were the Vikings really as enormous as legend has it? I mean, all of our cast, right? You guys were massive. We were talking to Kevin Durant, who's like 6'9", and Clive was saying, "Well, you what are you, Clive? 6'3", 6'4"?
6'3", yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm usually a tall girl. I felt really short on set, but I wonder if these Vikings actually were so enormous. So add to that, George, the terror of these ships coming through the mist, and then these. I don't think people were pretty tiny back in the day, but if Vikings were over 6 feet tall, they must have looked like monsters, and they were hairy.
Yeah, no, I like all of the above, and 5'9" and barely able to grow a beard. it makes it even scarier.
And they're all peace-loving monks as well that have got all that silver and jewels, and there's no one there to protect it. There's no armed guard on the gates, and that's what the Vikings were used to. The Vikings were used to hearing these tales from the sagas about, we were talking to Alyssa about this, Fafnir the dragon was there to guard all of this man's riches and things. So to just walk into somewhere expecting a fight and just seeing these men all just with their tonsures and their brown cloaks just standing around with books, it was bizarre to them too. And then, they were just taking... actually, that comes into... This is how our whole story begins, really, isn't it? Because when we come in, the Vikings are just slaughtering monks left, right, and centre. And I do remember the stunt guys had all this amazing choreography. You're going to pick him up, you're going to throw him, and then he gets a chair and blocks, and then Johan just went, no. They're just going to come in and go, dead, 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 and just make it as simple as possible. There's no action in this. This is what's going to make it. But there's a moment where Ragnar sees Athelstan, and he's not trying to save some gold or some silver or some precious object, but it's precious to him. He's saving a book. And that's what catches Ragnar's attention, and that's when the whole story kicks in. You got the two brothers, Ragnar and Rollo. Rollo wants to kill him. Ragnar wants to save him because Rollo can sense that Ragnar's got an ulterior motive, but he doesn't quite know what it is. He's not as switched on as Ragnar. And Athelstan is the conduit to everything, which is probably why you survived more than 5 episodes after that one scene.
I think you don't get to see until it's all finished how the creators and Michael and the producers put the show together. But I love the element of the show where you have two cultures meeting, and we portrayed those two different languages, and you have subtitles, Old Norse and Ancient Anglo-Saxon, and that was the first event like that, I guess, where the raid on Lindisfarne, and then seeing a wildly different culture and not understanding the language at the time there, neither Ragnar or Athelstan understanding one another, but seeing something symbolic like that book kickstart a kind of curiosity in Ragnar, maybe. And I never thought about that before working on Vikings. What would happen back then when you hopped over the channel and saw someone in France? Like, I guess the school kid in me, school kid history lessons, always just thought, yeah, well, they can talk to each other. Of course they can't. Like, people in France speak French, and they'd be speaking a completely different language. And now we know that, so we know when we go to another country now in 2021 that we're not going to be able to understand people there. But it must have been so weird for both parties to like land in a new land and suddenly you're making noises and sounds, but I don't understand you. What? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, just language is I guess that's why he thinks this man's valuable to me. Let's bring him home. Rest is history.
I remember talking to Johan because I didn't come in until season 2, but I knew Johan beforehand. And I remember him talking to me about you, George, and just saying that, I don't know if it was him or our casting director, but they just kept saying, like, George, you are Athelstan, whatever essence you had, that you should just go on set and be yourself. Play the wonderment, play the lost feeling. One scene that's really coming to mind is when you... poor you had to sit there and let a semi-naked Catherine and Travis come out and, posture and ask you to go to bed with them. I remember the look on your face.
That was the first scene I shot.
That was the first scene you shot?
That was the first scene that I shot as Athelstan. Was, okay, I've just had a circle shaved into my head. They've put this weird brown sack on me. Cool to set? Great. Okay, let's go to set. So what are we doing? What's the scene? Oh, they're both naked. Brilliant. And you want me to, what? Watch them? Okay. What have I signed up for? What is this show? It was. I love the fact that that was the first scene that I ever shot. Yeah,
and also just knowing who Catherine and Travis are and their sort of, their levels of confidence on set.
Yeah, but I didn't know them at that point. I mean, obviously we'd met a couple of weeks before, but you don't, and you don't know what people are like on set until you're there. And yeah, my first thought was, I really hope they're not going to make me do that at some point. And then they did.
I remember reading one of the first episodes before it was with History, whatever draft I got given of episode 1 and 2, because History had a lot of laws on nudity and violence and things like that, what they could show and what they couldn't show. But the script I read, Michael Hurst did obviously write The Tudors, which was super racy. But the one I read, I remember that scene. It was like Ragnar stood there, full frontal nudity, completely naked. It could have been a very different show, George.
No, well, I don't know if Johan would be happy. I think he would, but I remember in that first block us trying to shoot 2 versions. Do you remember that? There was it lasted about a day because brilliant Johan just said, I'm not doing this. But they tried to shoot a version that would be able to be watched internationally on kind of pay-per-view cable series, because History was this weird thing. Like you said, History Channel in the US was kind of basic cable. So it was on over 100 million households in the US or something. So it was kind of between what you're allowed to show on HBO and what you're allowed to show on network TV. And so they briefed Johan to kind of shoot a safe, nice version of the violent and racy scenes and then do one that's really... And I remember on the second day of doing it, he just had a massive hissy fit on set and was like, we're not doing this. We're doing 1 version. That's it. Thank God we did.
We still ended up doing 2 versions, but I think what it reverted to is that they just added all the scenes that you'd have to cut for commercial breaks in the US version. They were able to add scenes in for the international version, which is the right way to do it, right? You just get an extended version. But at the beginning, what you're saying is that they were going up to us going, right, well, we can add more sex in this version, and then we take it away for the US version, rather than actually being, well, can we add some scenes that can drive the story forward, which was what we did sometimes. I don't know if everyone's aware of that that's watching Vikcast, is if you've watched the US version, there is a version out there in Europe that you could track down. There's probably got some scenes of your favourite characters that aren't included in the US version.
I didn't know that was still the case. I thought we just shot 1 version. Shows how much I was concentrating.
No, there's some scenes between Lagatha and Rollo that the US versions have never really seen. There's about 3 that adds to the whole dramatic conclusion of Rollo confessing that he's Björn's father. And then I think in the US public are a bit like, wow, that came out of nowhere. But if you've watched the extended versions, there's certain scenes and you're like, oh, we saw that conversation between Lagatha and Rollo, and there's something there, and there's a history. And
that's frustrating when that happens, because that's happened. It happens throughout the show, and I don't think fans watching sometimes think, and they get really understandably upset because sometimes things don't make sense. And then I'm going, but you don't know. There was so much more in the script, but for editing or time or network purposes, it does get cut out. But yeah. So that was your first scene.
That was my first scene. Yeah, that was my first scene. And yeah, you referenced Johan. I remember kind of the first scene, I guess, that I had to be really upset, or not upset, but yeah, it was the raid on Lindisfarne. So it was one of the first times you see Athelstan, and I had to run into a room and basically shout the Vikings are coming, there's people in scary boats and they're all tall and huge. And we did 1 take of it. I run in, stand on my mark and get really flustered and upset about these big scary men, and I remember him just being like, cut, and he walked into the room and was like, what the fuck was all that bullshit drama school acting nonsense? Just be real. Lose all of that. Just come in here and just be normal, dude. God, let's go again. Roll the cameras. And I was like,
what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah, literally. Exactly. That's such a good impersonation.
I had a few of those days too.
No, but he was totally right. And to your point about everyone's briefing to me, just be George, because that's what this character is. I'd just fresh out of drama school where I'd trained for 3 years to, reimagine human beings on an epic scale and do massive transformative acting work. And and he was like, no.
Another hard thing is, I know you're a trained theater actor, and in theater school, we are taught we perform to the balcony, don't we? Perform to the last seat in the balcony. And I'm like you, I came from a theater background, so I sort of came on set and I was ready to perform. And, you know, in TV you can't. And I was surrounded by all these TV actors who are doing all their lines like this. No, you don't have to do much. So you learn the hard way.
What, Travis?
Trial by fire.
Sorry,
Say
Travis.
that again?
I was saying that often on set, you'd be on set doing a scene with Travis and you'd say your line and you'd see him say something. You'd be
What?
like, what? Yeah. What did he say? What? Travis?
Remember the read-through where Travis came in and he you know, because read-throughs are embarrassing anyway because they want you to talk to the other side of the table. Sometimes there's producers on the phone that you can't see and they're back in LA and they're listening. And I think there's the American way as opposed to the UK way because all three of us are obviously from the UK. But in America, there's a lot of pressure on the read-through. You can get recast at a read-through. Producers are like, well, if I didn't hear his performance very well, I think he's the wrong guy for the job. So we're all trying to give almost like a radio performance of the show. And Travis just said, mumbling through his lines. You can hardly hear anything he said. And then I think, I don't know who it was actually, but one of the producers came up to him because I was sitting next to Travis and they were like, you need to speak up a little bit. And he went, why? And he went, because, you know, do it like you do it on the day. He went, I am. Which he was. And it was genius because that was what Ragnar was all about.
Yeah.
But I don't think anyone quite got what he wanted to do with the character at the beginning. They were all very, very nervous. He's just mumbling through everything. And it ended up being one of the most genius characters, I think, in the last 5 years on television, what Travis did with that character.
Absolutely. Like you said, read-throughs are so scary because it kind of does feel like another audition. It's the first time you're presenting work, but you're sat in like jeans and a t-shirt round a conference table in some sort of hotel that they've all like put you in with bottles of water. You're not up on the moor. Like that first thing that you see in Vikings is you two up on that moor. Like, and I obviously I didn't see you shoot that and I didn't see it until the show came out, but Vikings was the first thing that I ever saw of myself. Was it? I think it was the first time I'd ever seen myself on screen, I think. Anyway, but the point was, it was the first thing that I watched.
Apart from that massive movie you did called Les Miserables.
Yeah, that was what I was working out. I was like, I was just working out. No, I was working out like, was that first or not?
That was just a little thing.
No, but like, blink and you missed me in that. But Vikings was the first thing. It was like, right, I get to watch my work like properly. And I remember Ep 1 of Vikings coming on and watching that. I think that's what I mean, is it's the first time I watched something where you have been really, really close to reading a script of something. You know, you've read every word and you've studied it and you don't have experience of, you know, years of reading scripts and seeing how they're realised so that, you know, now if I read a script, I'm like, oh, yeah, I think the result will probably end up like that in my head. Mm-hmm. But I had no concept of that. So it was so exciting. I remember watching that first ep and seeing you two do that massive fight sequence on the moor. I was like, okay, this is going to be awesome.
You thought at that point it was worth the bald spot on the top of my head.
I thought, oh my God, I've been cast as a monk and I definitely don't look that badass. Oh God.
How was it outside of filming as well? Because I remember we'd go out for like cast dinners and you'd have to wear a beanie the whole time because that tonsure was real. You had to walk around all of Dublin with a bald patch on the back of your head for the whole of season 1, wasn't it?
Awful, yeah.
And then you started to become a Viking.
Yeah. Awful. I mean, awful. Like, I'm just going to drop a massive name here and then I'll pick it back up and please forgive me. But on Les Miserables, when I was working with Eddie Redmayne, no, genuinely, I got the offer for Vikings doing that film. I got the offer to play Athelstan whilst working with him. And he said to me at the time, he'd played a priest in a big series called Pillars of the Earth, I think, and he'd had to have a tonsure. And I remember saying, I've been offered this part, but I have to play a priest, and I think I've got a shaved circle in the top of my head. And he said, it'll be totally fine, dude. It's a skull cap, and then they wig you. Don't worry. You won't need to have your head shaved. Don't. And I was like, oh, phew, okay, great. Eddie Redmayne say I don't need to have my head shaved, so I won't. So, and then I got to Dublin and went for my hair consultation. Consultation being the non-operative word, and sat in D, lovely D, the head of hair, in her chair, and then Johan came straight in.
That's it.
I didn't know at the time. Like, this was my first ever hair consultation, whatever one of them is. So I was exactly like you said, just wonderment and awe and naivety. Like, oh. Some people looking at me in the mirror and my hair. What's that? Oh, a razor. Oh, she's turned it on. Well, I'm sure that's just for the... Oh, it's gone into the top of my head. And Johan was sort of looking
my
from the
God.
side, being like, yeah, more. Because from the profile cap, we can't see it. It's just, you have to bring it down. Like, it's got to be bigger. Like, so we can